Hello, I'm Chad Boyd, Rangeland Scientist at the Eastern Oregon Agricultural Research Center. The rest of this week we'll be taking a look at different types of riparian plant communities and their role in influencing the functioning of riparian ecosystems. But before discussing these different plant associations, a few words about channel condition are in order. Most plant species growing in riparian zones have a high water requirement, and stream channel shape largely determines water table status. In narrow, deep stream channels, the water table is often relatively high, and site conditions allow for growth of riparian plant species with high water demand, such as sedges. If the stream channel widens or downcuts due to poor management, the riparian water table is effectively lowered, and stream-side sedges may be replaced by species characteristic of relatively drier sites, such as Kentucky bluegrass. Put another way, management-caused widening or downcutting of a stream could be considered a management-induced drought for stream-side plant communities. Today I want to discuss plant communities that occupy the habitat immediately adjacent to streams. The National Riparian Service Team and others have developed a useful way of thinking about these plant assemblages and have broken them down into colonizing and stabilizing species. Colonizers are those species that first occupy riparian habitat following a disturbance, such as channel downcutting or widening. These are species capable of establishing in standing water, and they often appear first on deposited sands or gravels that are otherwise barren of vegetation. These species initiate channel repair by trapping sediment and debris and helping to establish and build up stream banks. Common colonizer species in our area include brook grass and spike rush. Woody plants, such as coyote willow, also function as colonizers. These species typically have a shallow root system that is adapted to growth and habitat lacking a well-developed soil horizon. Yesterday we talked about the role of colonizer plants in shaping riparian habitat following channel disturbance. Today I want to discuss the next group of species in the successional chain, often referred to collectively as stabilizer species. Stabilizer plants generally require some level of soil development and are not usually associated with gravel or coarse material deposits. Common stabilizing species in our area include a variety of sedges, wiregrass, and woody plants such as mountain alder and a variety of willows. Some deeper-rooted grasses such as canary reed grass may also act as stabilizers. Stabilizer species have well-developed root systems that anchor deposited sediments in place, and their above-ground growth filters soil particles during high-flow events, helping to further the bank-building process. One published report suggested that willows and sedges compare favorably with anchored rock in terms of their ability to stabilize banks during high-flow events. For the past couple of days, we've been discussing plant species that occur in habitat immediately adjacent to a stream. Today, I'd like to move away from the stream bank and take a look at some riparian-associated grass species. Riparian grasses often occupy habitat between the more aquatic streamside sites and the surrounding uplands. One of the more common native species in our area is tufted hairgrass. However, non-native species such as red-top bentgrass and Kentucky bluegrass are more frequently prevalent. These species often provide much of the forage base associated with riparian areas, and some research suggests that riparian grasses may be preferred by cattle as compared to sedges, thus helping to reduce grazing pressure on streamside sedges. Additionally, these grasses can act as a buffer to filter out upland pollutants flowing into the riparian area. Encroachment of some riparian grasses, for example Kentucky bluegrass, into streamside habitat is often associated with a lowered water table and degraded stream conditions. Root density and rooting depth of bluegrass is much less than that of sedges, and as such, bluegrass does not perform well as a bank stabilizer. For most of this week, we've been discussing plant communities occurring within riparian zones. However, one management factor that is often overlooked is the influence of surrounding upland plant communities on the riparian environment. These upland communities impact riparian areas in a couple of ways that are worth considering. First, the amount, timing, and duration of high stream flow during spring runoff is influenced by the amount of upland runoff inputs. The amount of upland runoff is in turn influenced by grass abundance. Research has demonstrated that sites with a high abundance of perennial grasses produce much less runoff than sites with less grass cover, which can help reduce the severity of potentially damaging high flows. Another consideration in management of upland forage is the effect it has in keeping cows out of the riparian area. When upland forage abundance is low, cattle often congregate in adjoining riparian areas, increasing potential negative impacts such as bank damage and overutilization of woody species. Bottom line, Management of riparian vegetation is important, but don't forget about the uplands. I'm Chad Boyd, and thanks for listening.